for wildlife behavior and being able to determine where the best places are to put trail cameras. And this is one of her photographs that she let me use. I can't get that quality. I think that's with a modified. I think she has a DSLR that she converted into a trail camera. So she get these amazing photographs. And that puts the fish in a little bit friendlier light, I think, than some of the photographs I've seen out there. So anyway, my name's Ray Hardy, and I do volunteer educational programs for the Department of Environmental Protection in Connecticut. And what that's allowed me to do is participate in research projects that they've had going. I've worked on a 4-year fawn mortality study, which was total immersion, around the clock. Not me personally, we had different shifts, but all year long we'd be working on collaring and monitoring fawns and mainly determine what the mortality factors were. I've worked with them on bear projects. I've worked with them on a 4-year bobcat project. And most of my experience with trapping fishers has been on the bobcat project. Unintended non-target species that ended up in the trap. But that's about the extent as far as that part of the research with the DEP is mainly incidental trapping. We also spent a lot of time doing necropsies. Primarily what we were doing is determining fertility and stomach contents, as well as other basic metrics that we were looking at with them. So, I can figure out, there we go. So when I started out, they had a different name. I think it was, Martis? What was the specific name?
I think it was Martis Benenti.
Yeah. But they since have changed the name. I think most of this is a result of DNA studies. They're being able to fine-tune some of the distinctions between different species. I think that's a term they use in Canada, isn't it? French? Pecan. Anyway, what this map shows is the current range and historical range. And I think the range has extended more recently. I'm not sure what the date is on this particular map. This historical range shows them on the East Coast, pretty much into Labrador, down into Virginia in the mountains, the Appalachian Mountains down there. And they've been excavated in many of these locations. They've been reintroduced in some. I'm from Connecticut, and we had a reintroduction project. 1984 is when fishers were. It was a trade between, I think it was New Hampshire and Maine. We traded turkeys for fishers, and so I brought fishers down. And I forgot the total number. It wasn't a huge number of fishers, maybe 20 or something like that. Not a lot. And they were released in the northwest part of Connecticut, and then they were monitored for several years after that. They were radio collared, and they were monitored after that to see how they fared. And it seemed like they survived pretty well. Reintroduction. Now, since that time, that was in the northwest part of Connecticut. Since that time, they've naturally dispersed on the east side of the Connecticut River. So we have fishers now pretty much statewide. Not huge numbers necessarily, especially in the eastern part of the state. but they're pretty common. And just a little bit of natural history with them. Home range 3 to 15 square miles, average of 4 to 8 square miles. And typically, like with a lot of species, the males range over a wider territory than the females. And any of these numbers, any of the statistics they put out there, it's like in nature, there's no such thing as always a number. So these are general guidelines, but there's a lot of variation. And they habitat in large tracts of coniferous or mixed hardwoods, softwoods forests, containing large trees for denning. That last part's an issue in much of southern New England especially. We're losing a lot of trees that would be suitable for denning. You were talking about nesting boxes. They do have nesting boxes available. You can construct those for fishers. And that's kind of a nice idea because that gives them at least that much. At least it gives them preferred denning areas. Much like it's done with wood ducks and kestrels and a variety of other species too, having artificial nesting areas. So they can at least reproduce. The size, males a little bit bigger, about twice the size of sexual dimorphism that you find in fishers. And males are 36 to 40 inches long, and they weigh 8 to 14 pounds. This is, I can pass this around. This is a male fisher that's at that 40-inch range, going to the tip of the bone in the tail and the nose. They look a lot smaller. They shrink around their girth when they're tanned. I can pass that around. This is actually a pretty silky coat that he has. Females, for fur purposes, females are preferred because they have a softer, more silky fur. But that one's pretty. I do have another one at home. It's very coarse fur. But that gives you kind of an idea of the typical average coloration and the overall size. Females are 30 to 36, so they're kind of. If we're looking at other mustelids, we have besides our weasels, we have mink, and then we have otter, and fish are kind of in between that size range, and a female. The size of a female fisher and an adult male mink, it kind of sometimes can overlap. And same thing with juveniles as well. So if you're spotting something in the field, naturally you're looking at, okay, what's the habitat, and other details, how bushy is their tail for one. At a quick glance, sometimes it's hard to tell which one's which. But and the coloration, dark brown to nearly black, such as that one. That's kind of a mid-range color. There's some that are very dark. The pelt I have at home is black as far as I'm concerned, very, very dark. And sometimes they have a kind of a lighter coloration on their head and shoulders. That one has to some degree. And often they'll have you can see with minks too, sometimes they have a white patch at their throat or abdomen or at their genitals. So that's another possible characteristic. And it says here males will often have a grizzled appearance. as they get older. There's not a whole lot of really solid research on fishers. That's one of the reasons I'm fascinated with them, because they're there's always a mystery about these guys. They can live. It's been documented they can live 10 years, but often that's in captivity. I'm not sure of locations of farms that farm fishers for pelts at this point, but they have in the past, and this is an excellent book if you're interested in. This is very good, solid scientific research. This was published in '93, I think. So some of it's dated, but in actuality probably not, because not a whole lot of research has been done. So this is a good foundation as far as understanding the biology, ecology, and so forth of fishers. This is by Roger Powell, and he actually hand reared some fishers back when he was more active. And he had friends that also hand-reared fishers. So a lot of the information they have about them is really actually based on captive. And he was aware that there were some that lived to be 10 years old. I don't know in the wild whether that's necessarily the case, probably not. But that's a good number of years to expect. Reproduction, they have 2 to 4 kids born in March and April, and kids are weaned. They're probably fully weaned at 4 months. A lot of times the weaning process starts anywhere between 8 and 10 weeks, and they're starting to wean. The kids are attritial, which means that they're not fully developed when they're born. They have, their eyes are closed, their ears are shut, no teeth, and just a little bit of downy fur that they have. And so in the process of developing, by the time they're weaned, they're pretty much got their full coat of fur. Their eyes are open, their ears are open, and they're at 4 months they're pretty ambulatory. They climb. This fellow, Mr. Porter's research has them climbing like a squirrel. He says climbing like a squirrel in about 3 months. So it's a little bit slow development, but they're protected, hopefully in a good, safe place in a den, tree den, and their mother is very attentive. The interesting thing about, to me it's a fascinating subject, is delayed implantation. And so female fishers are fit the category of being barefoot and pregnant pretty much year round. And they will have their kids maybe the end of March on the average, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a little bit later, depending on where you're at. And as soon as they have their kids, within 1 week, they're bred. And then that little fertilized egg develops into a blastocyst, which ends up, it's kind of surprising. It's small, perhaps several thousand cells actually, but it's fairly small. And it doesn't implant, it's just kind of goes into dormancy and hangs in there inside the mother. And then it's implanted and develops into a fetus probably about a month prior. So the actual secondary pregnancy, if you want to call it that, is only a month long. But it's interesting, that whole subject, that whole idea about delayed implantation. There are a variety of species besides weasels that have this this strategy, this reproduction strategy. Bears do that. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and bears. Seals, a lot of the seals will have that. And those people know me, of course, I had to see if any deer would have that. And actually, roe deer have they have a delayed implantation. I think they talking about 3 to 5 month delay. So they're bred, and then that blastocyst will hang out and then become implanted in the womb after about 3 to 5 months. I'm not sure. Roe deer, I know, are in most of Western Europe, anyway. I'm not sure what the factors are that might have led to that strategy. It's interesting. And we have covered most of it. Yes?
I have a question about the sexual dimorphism. It's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Is there any research done about what the advantages of that are?
I'm sorry?
What the advantages of such extreme sexual dimorphism might be?
Yeah, that's been batted around for a long time, trying to figure out, well, why did they do that? I don't know what the consensus would be on that. That's still up for debate as to why that might happen. That happens with a lot of species, where you have definite size difference and coloration as well between male and female.
It can go both ways.
Yeah.
Bigger female, or bigger males, not even.
What's that?
You can have bigger females than males in birds.
Oh, in birds, yeah. Yeah, it's the other way around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's,
The theory that sounds most reasonable is that males travel more widely to get their food, so they need more muscles, if not anything else. Whereas the females are restricted in their range, and especially when they're rearing their little ones, they're pretty much restricted, so it's not necessary for them to have the bulk that a male would. And that sounds reasonable. That's one of the theories that this comes to. And then last item here is both male and female sexually mature at 1 year, but females will not bear offspring until about 2 years of age. I've heard reports of females bearing young at 1 year, but typically it's like 2 years of age. So we got their typical diet. And the porcupines, I'll talk a little bit more about their predation on porcupines. Squirrels, rabbits, snowshoe hares are a common prey species for them farther north than where we are in Connecticut. The northeastern towns of Connecticut do have some snowshoe hares, not a lot. Not until you get up Massachusetts and farther north. And their range pretty much overlaps. Wherever you see the range of snowshoe hares, same range as fishers. So they seem to be more keyed into snowshoe hares. Connecticut's kind of on the edge, I would think, of what's acceptable habitat and food source.
I don't see domestic cat on.
What's that?
Charlie said he doesn't see domestic.
In the trees. I've heard, there's no way of me confirming it, but I've heard that they're around here, they're the fastest arboreal mammal in existence in New England. And they have a unique adaptation. Like squirrels, their hind feet rotate around 180 degrees. They can walk down a tree face down, just like a squirrel. So that's pretty convenient for attacking, for climbing and outmaneuvering prey species and attacking porcupines. Pretty handy adaptation for that. It's kind of jumped ahead of me here, but it tracks these feet are from a roadkill female. So that's kind of, you see my thumb there, kind of representative of a typical adult female. I got the right front. So a lot of times I find it very helpful when identifying tracks if I know what their foot looks like. And so you can see the toe pads. They got 4 down in toe pad in the thumb. Toe number 1 is dropped and smaller, and usually that shows up in the track. Usually you'll see all 5 impressions. And you can see kind of a C-shaped metacarpal pad in this case, kind of a C shape. They are plantigrade, just like us in bears and raccoons. So their heel on the back foot especially, a lot of times you'll see their heel will show up. On the right rear, and like I say, I know they're right feet because they're just like us. Their little thumb doesn't amount to too much, but it's there and present. Now the right rear, the metatarsal pads, they have little tufts of fur on them, and those are scent glands. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, how that plays out when they're depositing scent. And like I say, with the rear feet, often you'll see the full foot, the heel, which you can see down below. These are all local. I've got a great spot, and regardless of our feelings about global warming, and we don't get a whole lot of snow, but when we do get snow, it's excellent for tracking. There are 2 inches of snow and it's wet, so we get really very nice impressions, very clear impressions. And so the 3 different patterns, a walking pattern. Let's see, we've got 2 and 2 together. Jumping over to the far side, 2x2 lope. We'll often see that. That's a very common thing, especially in deeper snow, where they bound. And all 4 feet will come. Picture how that works. They leap, the 2 front feet come down, and then their hind feet land on top of that. And then by that time, their front feet are already in motion. They keep repeating that process. So all 4 feet are in each one of those depressions. Now we see that pretty commonly, again, in deeper snow. They don't like deep snow because they have to expend a lot of energy by bounding. Same thing with any animal that has to bound, whether it be deer or anything else. They have to expend a lot of energy to do that. Another common one in the middle of 3x4 lope. And you can see the heel pads on that. So you can see the 5 toes, and you can see the separate pads on the metacarpal and metatarsal pads, and then you can see a full heel when they're loping. And again, they're plantigrade, so they're laying on their heel as well, and show the toes as well. And that gives the size. That knife is about a 4-inch knife, I think. And that's so that each one of those, the front foot, we're probably talking like 2-inch, something like that. Well, that's a male or female, I wouldn't be able to tell at that point, because there can be some overlap with a juvenile male and an adult female. When mating season is approaching, and if the snow is still on the ground, which a lot of times there is, it's not unusual for the males and females to travel together for a period. And so then you can really see a definite difference between big old male footprints and the female footprints together. The scat. It's a typical scat. It can vary somewhat from this. I didn't put any dimensions on this. We're talking about probably 3/8 diameter on the average, and then 4, and then in the folded one, it's probably 6 inches total. Seeing that folding in the scat is very common with fishers. And there was a tracking instructor years ago that explained why that is. He said it's because they have short legs. So that's why it folds. So that was the easy way to remember. This one looks like it's primarily meat diet. On that, I don't see any evidence of. I don't remember what time of year I took this photo. I have, not on this presentation, but I had some photos at home, kind of cool. See, you can actually see where they backed up and squatted on the snow and see how they left that. And there are some photos, again, not on this, unfortunately, photos that I've taken during mating season, where you can see a lot of activity, male and female, running around in circles, and maybe a deposit of scat as part of that whole complex. They do create slides. They're weasels, so that's part of their nature. The ones that I've seen are not as extensive as what you might see with an otter, however. But there's a fine line, I suppose, between distinguishing one from the other. From what I understand, some of this has to do with scent marking by gliding on their belly to leave scent behind on the snow. This is courtesy of Bob. This is part of the video that I couldn't, for whatever reason, I couldn't download the whole video. But this is kind of a cool photo. He's scent marking on that. I say he, but it's hard to tell. I think that's a he. They have and pass this around. This is a fisher skull. This is resin. Other people that have come to programs are a little hesitant about handling live scat and live skulls and stuff. So we have resin. So this is a male fisher, and I pass this around so you can see. But he has a keel on the top that females do not have. And as the male gets older, sometimes it's more pronounced, but they'll have that keel on the top. What that results in is when you see them on the trail cam or whatever, they have a bump on their head, whereas females are more straight. So that's one way of telling male from female. I think I don't know if it shows on here. Oh yeah, it does. These are pretty detailed, which is nice. On either side, we have the carnassials back here for shearing. A lot of times when they're opening up a carcass, they'll go and use their carnassials. They use the side of their jaw to open them up. Yeah. And that first carnassial, pay close attention to up where it connects up with the maxilla. In the middle, there's a little tiny divot, a little bump on both sides. That's a rootlet, and it's exposed only on fissures. So that's one way. If you have a skull and not too sure, you look for that little rootlet exposed, and that'll determine that's definitely a fissure. Because our other muscles don't have it. I'm gonna pass that around. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have the other clips from this film. But this, I thought this was cool because this is typical scent marking behavior. They may pee on it. A lot of times it's just a matter of rubbing their anal glands along that to leave a scent. And everybody else is curious. Raccoons and everybody else in the woods is always curious to see what that is. And the scent posts that I've run across, my experience, a lot of them look similar to that. They have a very sharp point on them, which I would think be quite uncomfortable, but now shortly thereafter, he came up out of the left bottom of the photo, came up, climbed the floor, deposited scent, walked off a few steps, and then he started hopping with his hind feet. That's where those scent glands on the other photograph, that's where they come into play. He's impressing that scent by hopping along. Oh, you've had some of these ones, okay. These are a couple of examples of anal gland secretions. And I haven't noticed any particular strong odor with these things, but they're fairly small. I think in the right-hand photo, I think that's a nickel. To try to give you a sense of the size. Pretty small, black tarry deposits from the anal glands. They vary somewhat in appearance. I've seen some that are more blonde colored, but that's if you're in the right habitat. This was confirmed. I confirmed this by the fact that there was a lot of noticeable fissure activity in that area. And the one on the left has a ruler there, so you kind of get a sense of the average size of those. They're fairly small, easy to overlook, unless you definitely know you're in fissure territory. You know, look for these little things. They're black and tarry and shiny. This was, I'm not sure what the intention was on the fissure part. That's a root at my sit spot. So he left a anal gland secretion right on my sit spot. So I'm not sure what he's trying to tell me. And this on down below. I'm trying to think of where this was. He deposited his scat. If you look real close, you can see where he backed up and just dropped his scat right there, scent marking. And the one on the right, there's you can't really tell from this photograph, but there's both female and male fissures tracks there, kind of going around the circle. There's a scat deposit. So this, I would imagine, has something to do with the mating season, behavior during the mating season. Those about between the scat and the anal gland secretion, those are about the only two visible things that I know of that fishers leave behind. When's this class over?
5.
Oh, at 5, okay. I'm way ahead of schedule. So anyway, dealing with Connecticut, what's being studied is movement patterns and habitat selection of fishers. And what prompted this statewide study is a friend of mine she was working on her master's at Central Connecticut State University, and she was doing the same thing, one person, kind of more limited scale, but what she was noticing in Connecticut, that there was a decline in population from 84 when they were introduced, they increased, and her research suggested it was a gradual decrease as time has gone on in Connecticut. And so the state picked up on that and decided, okay, let's see what we can find out about what their movement patterns and what might be impacting them. This is the fisher that I caught when I was actually trapping bobcats. So he was pretty nervous when I came up to the cage, backed off, but I just squatted down, and so his curiosity kicked in, so he came over and checked me out. They're not vicious. You hear that word a lot applied to them.
How about their screeching at night? What is there any truth to that they're screeching like a angry person in the woods?
I think I need my interpreter.
Yeah. Do you have any experience with them screeching like they're sometimes attributed to screaming at night?
Most time, the internet's one of the worst places to research. You have all kinds of reports of, you have a video and it's all black, and they hear the screeching. You say, oh, there's a fisher out there screaming bloody murder, killing something, obviously. And if you do some real solid research, you find out it's probably a red fox. Red fox can screech pretty horrifically on the woods. The only vocalizations that I'm aware of, again with limited exposure to them, is the only thing I can describe it as is a chortle.
Yeah.
Okay. And they will growl if they feel threatened, but not the screaming and carrying on that is often attributed to fishers. But that plays in handily with them being vicious and all that. They're loud and bloodthirsty and all that kind of stuff. And they will, like any weasels, they can get into chicken pens, and some reliable reports have suggested, well, they've killed all the chickens in there and just left them. And that is a name for that. It's a hen house syndrome. And a lot of animals will respond the same way. In nature, they come across one prey animal, and that prey animal may squawk, may disappear, or be caught in a chicken pen. It's like sensory overload. So anything that squawks is supposed to be killed. And so it's an unnatural situation. And a lot of times that's the outcome because they just get to overdrive. And it's not so much anything other than the noise that seems to trigger that. So that doesn't help with their reputation, but it is a natural behavior with a lot of animals besides just fishers. if you are in Connecticut, these are two places they can report sightings or roadkill like that. Usually my job ends up picking up the bodies and delivering them to the office. What they try to do, again, is understand fishes better, more than just strictly what might be contributing to population decline, but just to have a better understanding of their movement patterns and their behavior and so forth. And so the past 3 winters had volunteers that have live trap fishers all over the state. So they're collecting data, nothing confirmed yet, nothing published at this point. From my research, things that might contribute to a population decline are one might be over-trapping. It doesn't take much trapping to decimate the fish population. It is said that they're pretty easy to catch. My experience is, yeah, that's probably the case, because I caught several fisheries that I didn't intend to. They just walked into the trap because they're attracted by the bait that's in it. Another one, fishers do have cyclical population increase and decline. That's been researched more in areas where snowshoe hares exist, and we know snowshoe hares do the same thing. So snowshoe hare population goes up, and then there's a little lag in the fisher population goes up. Snowshoe hare population goes down, and there's a little lag, and the fisher population goes down. I don't know if that is a factor. It may be some aspect of that's a factor in Connecticut. Again, we don't have much in the way of snowshoe hare, but we do have other animals, rabbits and so forth, that do increase and decrease cyclically. The other thing is there was a recent study done in, I think, northern New England, and Vermont. They captured, or they trapped, and took roadkills and so forth, fishers, and they did necropsies on them. We find that there's very high blood levels of anticoagulant. And that, in Vermont, of all the ones that they had brought in for necropsies, it was 100%. Every single one of the ones they brought in. And how that might impact on their survivability, I don't know. I do know from other species, especially raptors, anything that eats rodents, they're exposed to rodenticide. And Tufts University has their wildlife clinic in North Grafton, I think it is, and they get hawks all the time in there. Every single one of them is suffering from rodenticide exposure. So I would say that probably that is a detrimental effect to fishes as well. So I'm curious to see what the outcome is, see what they determine as far as what might be impacting the populations in Connecticut. My feeling is it might be a combination of all 3 of those, not just one in particular. But, and it's roadkills amount to some, but not huge. Trapping and cyclical population patterns are definitely can be a factor. And rodenticide, I wouldn't doubt that is also certainly undermining the health and consequently the survivability of the fishes as well. I just want to share a couple of things to kind of dispel the whole idea about fishes being vicious. I've had occasionally, I don't see them that much during the day. I have First time I noticed them in my area, they were introduced in the western part of Connecticut in '84. First time I started noticing them was probably about 10, 15 years ago. Started seeing signs and actual visuals of fissures in my area in eastern Connecticut. And using my practice, I'll go out. My primary focus is deer, as most people know, but can't help but see the signs and activities of other species that coexist in those areas. Where I'm at right now, we have fishers, and we have bears come through once in a while. We have plenty of bobcats, plenty of coyotes, obviously plenty of deer. So we have a lot of species that didn't see when I was a kid. I grew up in Connecticut, and I think I saw my first deer when I was probably about 12 years old, and it just blew me away. It was a life-changing experience because you just didn't see them. And we had a 70-acre farm. We had habitat, we had suitable habitat, but they just weren't present. That goes back historically, 1900. I think the estimate of deer in Connecticut were 50 total. Right now, we have somewhere in the range of 100,000. And mostly that occurred when, they'd been in the farms and stuff started growing back in. They started establishing enforceable hunting regulations. And the combination of that took, for Connecticut, we had about the Civil War, 66% of the state was clear. Now it's the other way around. We got 66% forested. And so we have amazing habitat for a wide variety of species. I never saw fisher, I never saw bobcat, although they apparently were still present in Connecticut at that time, 60, 70 years ago. Still present in Connecticut in low numbers. Coyotes were non-existent at that point. I didn't see my first coyote in my land till 84, 85, I think. I think they were first sighted, coyotes were first sighted in Connecticut about 1950, something like that. And now they're all over the place. So I figured I've traveled all over the country, and I said, I could stay home and see the whole play, the whole thing's right in my own backyard. Predator and prey relations, and quite a wide variety. But one kind of comical experience was walking down the trail, and a juvenile fisher goes trotting across the trail in front of me, goes over to an oak tree, and starts climbing up the oak tree. I don't know what that is. And he's peeking at me. He's going up one side, the other side. And I thought it was good. I did happen to get that on film. I thought that was kind of hilarious. So I go down the same trail in the same basic area the next day, and I look to the north. There's a swamp and a bunch of young deer. They're probably yearlings at that point, and they were playing, running around. But something seemed odd because I saw this black thing scurrying back and forth. The fisher and them were playing. The juvenile fisher and the young deer were just playing, just chasing each other back and forth, just like they would with each other. And I thought that was pretty interesting to see. Because adult fishers will prey on fawns. That's happened. I worked a number of years in fawn rehab, so we get fawns that were attacked by fishers every once in a while. And it was the same, 8 to 14 pounds for a male. And a fawn, when they're a day or two old, they might weigh 8 pounds. So they're certainly within the size that is manageable for them. So they do that. And another kind of, nothing major, but it was interesting to me. I was sitting down, my back up against a big pine tree, and a fisher comes trotting towards me. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, wild animals are hyper alert. He was just diddy-bopping along, oblivious, until he got close enough to lift up and we made eye contact. He did a 180 and took off. But it was kind of interesting to see that if they're not expecting, if there's no reason to expect a problem, they just kind of go about their daily routine. And I said sometimes that's a good way to get have encounters with a variety of wildlife. That you sit absolutely still. And sometimes it depends on where you're at. If you're in my area, there's a lot of human traffic, so they're used to human smell, so scent isn't that much of an issue. The movement is. And I don't know if I don't know if this is approaching conspiracy theory, but my personal feeling from my own experiences is that all these expensive camouflage outfits are just lining the pockets of manufacturers. Because most wild animals exhibit what is known as neophobia. And so anything new in their landscape, they're very, very cautious. I watched a pine tree fell down. I was sitting up against a bigger pine tree, and a fawn, or older fawn, in the winter, came over, and he could care less about me. He was concerned about that pine tree all of a sudden being there. And he spent probably 15, 20 minutes investigating that pine tree. And so, one thing, as far as being able to observe wildlife, know the habitat, know who's likely to live there, look for tracks and signs, and then make a habit of going in there on a regular basis. You don't have to wear anything fancy. I usually wear subdued colors because that's what I do, but the color blue seems to be an issue with a lot of wildlife. Deer is very noticeable because their range of vision in the spectrum is now lowered. So blue is brighter than red. Red to them, apparently, from the research, apparently is more like a brown color.